Jacob Harris was accused of theft by the mentor he once trusted, James Prescott, a powerful CEO hiding dark secrets. Just when it seemed Jacob would lose everything, a whistleblower and a surprise witness turned the case upside down. The truth hit harder than anyone expected, and trust me, the way justice was served will leave you stunned. Jacob Harris had always believed in the power of mentorship. When he joined Synergy Systems fresh out of college, he saw the opportunity of a lifetime working under James Prescott, a man he admired, not just for his business acumen, but for his ability to inspire people. James wasn't just the face of Synergy Systems. He was its engine, a magnetic presence who turned every boardroom meeting into a masterclass in leadership. Jacob, eager and ambitious, soaked up everything James had to offer. Under James's mentorship, Jacob poured his heart and mind into Synergy Systems, working tirelessly on innovative ideas that pushed the company ahead of its competitors. From late-night brainstorming sessions to days spent perfecting prototypes, Jacob's creativity and drive became key ingredients in Synergy's meteoric rise. By the time Jacob reached his late 20s, he had earned the respect of his colleagues and built a name as one of the company's brightest talents. But admiration can sometimes blind a person to hard truths. Beneath James's polished exterior lay a man with sharp elbows, someone willing to cut corners and exploit any advantage to stay ahead. Jacob heard whispers of questionable deals and the quiet disappearance of rivals, but he brushed them aside. James had given him opportunities he could only dream of, and he wasn't about to question the hand that had guided him. That all changed the day Jacob tendered his resignation. He'd outgrown his role at Synergy Systems and felt the pull to create something of his own. Jacob envisioned a startup that would reflect his values: innovation, transparency, and integrity. He expected James to be proud of his decision, perhaps even supportive. Instead, James barely looked at him during their final meeting, offering a terse, "Good luck, Jacob," before dismissing him with a wave of his hand. 2 months later, Jacob's dream of independence turned into a nightmare. A letter from Synergy Systems' legal team arrived on his desk, accusing him of stealing proprietary software. The lawsuit was a bombshell, and the media pounced on the story with ferocity. Headlines painted Jacob as a cunning thief, a young prodigy who had betrayed his mentor to get ahead. Tech prodigy or tech pirate, read one article. The betrayal that shook Synergy Systems, declared another. James Prescott, with his tailored suits and carefully crafted public image, played the part of the wronged visionary to perfection. His statement to the press was simple yet devastating. "I trusted Jacob, and he repaid me by stealing from the company that gave him everything." The weight of the accusations was crushing. Jacob, who had spent his entire career building a reputation for integrity, was now seen as a pariah. His fledgling startup hemorrhaged clients, and even some of his closest allies began to doubt him. What made it worse was the sense of helplessness. Jacob knew he hadn't stolen anything. The software in question was his brainchild, something he'd been developing long before he joined Synergy Systems. But proving it in court was another matter entirely. James's lawyers were relentless, combing through every email, every file, searching for something to discredit him. And James himself? His cold, calculated glares across the courtroom were enough to make Jacob's stomach churn. As the trial date approached, the pressure mounted. Friends urged Jacob to settle, to cut his losses and move on. But every time he considered it, he thought about what James had said during their last meeting. "Good luck, Jacob." The words echoed in his mind, not as a farewell, but as a challenge. James hadn't just filed this lawsuit to protect Synergy's intellectual property. He had done it to crush Jacob, to ensure he never became a threat. It wasn't just Jacob's career on the line, it was his name, his integrity, and the belief that justice could prevail even when the odds were stacked against him. Yet, as confident as Jacob tried to appear, doubt gnawed at him. What if the system failed him? What if James, with his power and resources, succeeded in rewriting the truth? In the courtroom, the reality was even grimmer. James's team painted Jacob as a rogue employee who had siphoned off company secrets in a calculated betrayal. They dismissed his protests as excuses and attacked his character at every opportunity. The more they pressed, the harder it became for Jacob to stay composed. The man who had once been a star in the tech world now seemed small and vulnerable, his confidence eroded by the relentless onslaught. Jacob was fighting not just for his company, but for his very identity. And yet, as the trial unfolded, he couldn't shake the feeling that the man he had idolized all of those years had set this trap long ago. The lawsuit wasn't about justice. It was about control. And if Jacob was going to survive, he'd have to find a way to turn the tables before it was too late. Still, as the court adjourned for the day, Jacob caught a glimpse of James leaving the courtroom. His shoulders, usually held high, were hunched ever so slightly. For the first time, Jacob felt like he might have the upper hand, but Valerie's parting words to him that evening echoed in his mind. Never underestimate a cornered predator. Tomorrow, we finish what we started. James Prescott, the man who had commanded boardrooms and controlled narratives with ease, was unraveling before everyone's eyes. The damning evidence presented by Valerie Lang had struck a nerve, and his carefully constructed composure crumbled. "I object," James barked, his voice echoing in the courtroom. Rising from his seat, he pointed a trembling finger at Valerie. "This so-called evidence is fabricated, a desperate attempt to cover up Harris's theft." His words were sharp, but his tone betrayed his desperation. Valerie didn't flinch. Calm and resolute, she locked eyes with James, her expression daring him to continue. "Mr. Prescott," she said, her voice measured but unyielding, "I suggest you let your attorney speak for you. This isn't a boardroom where you can shout down opposition." James clenched his fists, his face flushing with anger. "This whistleblower report? It's a smear campaign orchestrated by Harris and his legal team. None of it can be trusted." He gestured wildly toward Jacob, who sat silently, his jaw tight. "You think this amateur could have built anything without stealing from me? Without me?" The judge's gavel slammed down, cutting through the chaos. "Mr. Prescott, you are out of line. Sit down, or I will hold you in contempt of court." James hesitated, his chest rising and falling rapidly, before sinking back into his chair. But the damage was done. His outburst had painted him as defensive, even guilty. Valerie seized the moment. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady, "I'd like to call a surprise witness to the stand. Laura Carter, former Chief Financial Officer of Synergy Systems." The name sent a ripple through the courtroom. Journalists whispered furiously, some already typing the headline, "Ex-Synergy CFO takes the stand in shocking twist." James froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. Laura Carter entered the room with the poise of someone who had nothing left to lose. Once James's most trusted advisor, she had left Synergy Systems under mysterious circumstances years earlier. As she took her oath, the tension in the room reached its peak. "Miss Carter," Valerie began, "can you confirm your role at Synergy Systems and your reasons for leaving the company?" Laura nodded. "I was the Chief Financial Officer for 6 years. I left after uncovering financial irregularities that I couldn't in good conscience ignore." Valerie stepped closer. "Can you elaborate on those irregularities?" Laura glanced at James, her expression a mix of anger and resolve. Mr. Prescott was diverting company funds to silence potential whistleblowers. He used these funds to pay settlements under the guise of legal expenses. Gasps filled the courtroom. Laura continued, her voice unwavering. He also appropriated Jacob Harris's software designs and passed them off as Synergy Systems intellectual property to attract investors. James shot up from his seat. "Lies!" he shouted. "This is nothing but a vendetta." His lawyer pulled him back, hissing something inaudible, but James's outburst only added fuel to the fire. Valerie pressed on. "Miss Carter, do you have evidence to support these claims?" Laura nodded. "Yes. I kept copies of financial records and emails documenting the payments and communications regarding Mr. Harris's designs." The courtroom descended into chaos. Journalists frantically typed, and the gallery buzzed with conversation. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, demanding order, but the revelation had already sent shockwaves far beyond the courtroom walls. Within hours, the news hit every major outlet. Headlines declared James Prescott's fall from grace. Former employees of Synergy Systems began coming forward, leaking emails and documents that corroborated Laura's testimony. The once loyal ranks of James's empire crumbled as self-preservation took precedence. Synergy Systems stock nosedived overnight, wiping out millions in shareholder value. Investors, once charmed by James's charisma, now demanded his resignation. Social media erupted with outrage, with hashtags like #justice for Jacob trending globally. Amid the chaos, Jacob sat in his small office, watching the headlines flood in. Though vindicated, he felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The fight to clear his name had taken a toll, and the path to rebuilding his reputation seemed just as daunting as the battle he'd just endured. Worse yet, he couldn't shake the fear that James, cornered and humiliated, would find a way to retaliate. But Jacob wasn't alone. Valerie, steadfast and unflappable, assured him that this was only the beginning of his recovery. "You've done the hardest part," she said. "Now you just need to keep moving forward." As James Prescott faced the wreckage of his empire, Jacob Harris looked ahead, determined to rise from the ashes. The trial had been a battle for the truth, but the war for Jacob's future, and James's accountability, was far from over. In the final days of the trial, James Prescott, cornered and defeated, agreed to a plea deal. He admitted partial guilt, dropped the lawsuit against Jacob Harris, and agreed to pay substantial reparations. The courtroom's tense energy dissolved, replaced by murmurs of disbelief at James's downfall. Outside, Jacob was met by a crowd of reporters and supporters. Though vindicated, his exhaustion was evident. "Justice isn't about winning," he told the press. "It's about exposing the truth." With that, he walked away, avoiding the spectacle of celebration. In the weeks that followed, Synergy systems collapsed under the weight of lawsuits and scandal. James resigned, his reputation irreparably damaged, while his once loyal employees leaked more damning information. Investors fled, leaving the company in ruins. Meanwhile, Jacob's company, Spark Dynamics, gained momentum. Freed from the shadow of false accusations, it thrived, earning accolades for its innovation. Jacob, though scarred by the ordeal, used his newfound platform to advocate for integrity in the tech industry. The trial became a cautionary tale. Ambition without ethics leads to ruin. For Jacob, it was a hard-fought lesson in resilience and the power of truth.